Hi, Sana, it's Mimi, and I have a new story for you. The story is called The Tale of Peter Rabbit. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful backyard, and in the backyard was a huge oak tree. And at the bottom of the oak tree, there was a burrow. It's like a tunnel that goes underground. And in the burrow lived Mrs. Rabbit and her 4 children, Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Mrs. Rabbit was very proud of her kids. Flopsy and Mopsy and Cottontail were very good bunnies. Peter, not so much. He was kind of mischievous, kind of enjoyed getting in trouble. Well, one day Mrs. Rabbit called the kids together and said, I have to go get stuff for dinner. You be very, very good and stay in the yard, or you can hop down the lane to the end of the lane and then back home. But don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. He will hurt you. So be good bunnies, and I'll make you something really good for dinner. And she put on her hat, and off she went. Well, Flopsy and Mopsy and Cottontail and Peter were all playing bunny games in the backyard. And Flopsy said, hey, let's hop to the end of the lane. And the others said, sure, except Peter, who said, nah, you guys go ahead. I'm going to stay here. So they did. They started hopping down the lane. And Peter thought, what's so special about Mr. McGregor's garden that we're not allowed to go in? I want to see what's in there. So he scooted under the gate, and you know what was in there? Vegetables, every kind of vegetable you ever thought of. There was lettuce and potatoes and peas and green beans and squash and oh my gosh, so many things. Well, Peter hopped over to the cabbage and started to eat it. A little bit bitter though. So he hopped over to the peas and he started to eat them. But he didn't know about pea pods, and he started eating the whole thing, and it wasn't all that good. And then he saw the strawberries. I love strawberries, Peter thought. And he hopped over to the strawberry bush, and he picked 3, and he ate them all the way down. But they weren't ripe. And it got in his tummy, and it gave him a tummy ache. So Peter thought, I think maybe I better go home, because I don't feel so good. Well, Peter started to hop and realized he didn't know where the gate was. So Peter was a smart bunny, and he'd hop 2 or 3 feet and then raise up and look and look. Then he'd hop a little further, then go up again, and he'd look and he'd look. Then he'd hop a little further, and he'd got up again, and there was Mr. McGregor right in front of him with a rake. Thought maybe he didn't see me. I'll get down real little. But you know what? That was the day that Peter chose to wear his brand new bright blue coat with the brass buttons down the front. Sure enough, Mr. McGregor saw him, and Mr. McGregor started to swing the rake and chase after him. Well, Peter hopped like crazy, and Mr. McGregor kept swinging the rake back and forth. Peter came around the corner and right into the bean netting. Now he was stuck. Those bright brass buttons were stuck in the netting, and he couldn't get away. Quick, he unbuttoned the buttons and pulled his bunny arms out, left the coat hanging, and took off down another row, Mr. McGregor right after him. Well, Peter hopped and hopped and hopped and hopped and hopped right into the tool shed. I gotta hide, he thought. And he looked around and he saw a watering can, and he jumped in the watering can. Except it had water in it. Well, he thought, I better stay here. I'll just stay here very quiet. Mr. McGregor won't know I'm here. Well, Mr. McGregor came in the tool shed and didn't see Peter, but he knew he was in there. So he started looking under the flower pots. And when he got to the very end of the row, Peter popped up and sneezed. It was so cold and wet in that watering can. He sneezed. Well, Mr. McGregor heard that, turned around, and started to chase him again. Where Peter jumps out of the watering can, water flies everywhere, and he takes off into the yard and found a spot under the fence and scooted under. Whew, he was safe. He was safe, but he was in the lane on the opposite side of his house. Well, he got down real low and hopped really quickly but silently around the fence this way, around the garden fence that way, and almost around here when he lifted his head and saw there was his brand new bright blue jacket with the golden buttons made into a scarecrow. Well, Peter thought, my mom might kill me. I'll go back and ask for my jacket, he thought. But then he decided he better not do that and just take himself home. And so he did. He hopped home and down into the burrow underneath the oak tree. He laid down, and he was so tired, he fell asleep and didn't wake up till the morning. And Flopsy and Mopsy and Cottontail had dinner of carrot cake. And Mrs. Rabbit said, I wonder where his coat went. And that's the tale of Peter Rabbit.